Hello, welcome to Rachel's Chatroom. So I'm Rachel and I've got a very special guest with me today. His name is Mike and he actually is my brother-in-law. So today I would like to find out from him a very interesting interview experience he had in a company that I'm sure most of you have heard of, and that is Facebook. So he started off as a software engineer. He's got 16 years of working experience. He climbed his way to the top. He's currently a VP and a director of a financial institution. So today, Mike, we'd like to find out from you, how was your experience like in Facebook? The questions they ask you, the culture, the vibe that you got of that. Walk us through the process.
So first and foremost, very happy to be here today to share and discuss, my experience, interviewing with Facebook. Just a brief introduction about myself. Out of college, I got a typical, full-time software development position. It was really a 9-to-5 job, doing a lot of coding and progressing through, the coding. I got good at it, and then obviously, you get promoted to tech lead, and then from tech lead you become a software development manager, and then from then on, you become a director, as well as as you progress further, as you become more business savvy, then you can hit that VP position. That's just briefly my work experience, so happy to answer any questions that you have.
Very interesting, Mike. Thanks for sharing. Very impressive resume. So first off, how did you actually get the interview with Facebook? Did they LinkedIn you or drop you a message through email?
Yeah, so I was actually headhunted through LinkedIn. So funny story, I received 3 emails from the Facebook recruiter, and a lot of times, when I get headhunted, I'm quite lax about it in the sense that, maybe it could be spam, and whatnot. But this recruiter was pretty persistent though, and I felt like this might be an actual legitimate request, So then I responded back, and the whole interview process started then.
Okay, so how much time did they actually give you to prepare for the interview? Because I remember you mentioned that you actually had to take a flight down to California, right? Because currently you're based in Minnesota. So how much time did you have?
Yeah, so in terms of the process itself though, first of all, the Facebook recruiter, he'll reach out, and the first step is really, having a more of an informal interview with the recruiter first of all. It was a phone interview.
Okay.
But for an informal interview, there's actually 2 informal interviews, so one with the recruiter, and then another one with a bit more technical person. That person that I talked to was actually a software engineering manager for Facebook. So once you get past those 2 phone interviews, and if they still want to pursue another round of interview, that would be the on-site interview at the California site, which is the Facebook headquarters.
Okay, so just to recap, they actually reached out to you via LinkedIn, right? They dropped you a message first, and then you responded,
Yep.
and then they gave you a phone call,
Correct.
and then another phone call after that,
Correct.
right? So that's like the pre-filtering.
Yes.
Cool. So and then from there to the day you went to the site for your on-site interview, how much time was that?
Yeah, this was actually I find pretty unique because I've been to a lot of interviews before, right? And Facebook, this recruiter actually asked me, how much time do you need, right?
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so they're the ones that actually pose that question to you. Before even posing the question, the recruiter did send me in terms of how the interview process will look like.
Okay.
Just give you a sense of what is expected, so that you have some sense of how long it will take you to prepare. So obviously it's one of those where you ask a question and I just say, hey, I needed 3 months, and they're absolutely fine with that. So between the phone interview to the on-site interview, I had 3 months to prepare for my interview.
Okay, cool. So that's, I think, quite enough of time. And also, I think what's really interesting about Facebook at this stage already is that they actually ask you, which time suits best. They respect your schedule, basically, right? Which is very unusual because usually, the company will kind of like dictate a time and kind of expect you to show up. I'm not saying all, but in general, but for Facebook, it's quite the opposite, which is a great thing. And so after your phone interviews, 3 months later, you showed up at Facebook. How many people you met and what position these people held? Walk us through.
Sure, yeah. Prior to the on-site interview, the recruiter will give you this agenda.
Okay.
And I think it was only a week before the actual interview that you'll find out the names of the interviewers.
Okay.
But prior to that, like I said, given the agenda, there's a set of topics, interview topics,
Okay.
high-level topics or categories that they will actually let you know that hey, these are the few questions that we'll be focusing on during the interview. So, for example, okay, so the agenda actually consists of 5 parts to the interview. 5 parts.
Okay.
So the first one being a coding interview.
Okay.
The second one being a system design interview.
Okay.
Third one behavioral.
All right.
Fourth one architecture.
Wow.
And then the fifth one being people management.
Wow.
Yep, it's a full day interview day. I believe it starts from 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 p.m.
Okay, wow, that's a full day affair.
Yep.
So I think the good thing here is that you actually knew who you were gonna be speaking to, who exactly it was, what positions they held, and also what type of questions, roughly, at least you knew what areas to, that they were gonna tackle, right? So how long was it per session with the person, and what type of questions did they ask? Because we always get very, the generic questions like, what are your strengths and weaknesses, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm sure Facebook had something more interesting to ask, something beyond questions like this, right? So yeah, just share with us what type of questions that were thrown at you.
Yeah, so, even the type of interviewers as well. So you get, from a software developer to a VP that will be interviewing you actually. So, it's very important that, as you step into to the interview, you're able to cater your answers and respond correctly to those different levels, right? So, for instance, during the coding interview, it was actually a software developer that was asking me those questions, and then for behavioral and the leadership, questions, it was actually a director of engineering that was asking me those questions. Now, back to your question though, as for what type of questions, right?
Yeah, give us an example, let's talk about behavioral.
Yep. So behavioral, at a high level, their focus is really more about understanding you as an individual.
Okay.
So for instance, right, what motivates you?
Okay.
How you communicate. How you handle feedbacks.
Okay.
In a challenging environment. How you approach it. So those are the questions that were framed to really get a glimpse of how you as a person, as an individual, in those different circumstances, you respond to those situations. So, for example, right, they would say that because this is actually a managerial position.
Right.
So if you have a direct report, that walks up to you one day and this direct report, wanted to, hey, I'm not satisfied, with my current software developer position. I want to move away from an individual contributor to a managerial position. So you as a director, when you get surprised or get challenging, demands or requests like that, how do you approach it? So they want to get details like that from you. There are a lot of interesting questions like that get posted.
So let's stick to that question, right? So the one, direct report asking if he or she could move away from his role as an individual contributor and wanting to be a manager, right? So how did you handle that question? Could you share with us exactly, what exactly you told them, and do you think you did well? Did you give them the answer that they wanted to hear?
I think so. So now this did not happen to me before.
Okay.
So then what you want to do is make sure that you want to describe a reason, how you would respond to that situation to them.
Okay.
Because it hasn't happened to you. So what I did was, I told them that first and foremost, though, in an ideal situation, if you're managing your directs correctly, you're keeping pulse with their engagement, you should be able to sense, does this person have interest in, seeking, further development into a managerial position. So you should not be surprised, in the sense that, if you are having constant, frequent check-ins, pulse checks with the directs, you should be having discussions about their career.
Okay.
So first of all, if you're doing a job in most cases, you will not be surprised, meaning like you should not be surprised by anyone asking you those questions. You should be prepared to answer it. Okay. Now, if it did happen where if I was surprised though, I think that it means that we'll have to then talk about, first of all, assuming in this particular case, maybe this individual is not suited, for this position,
Okay.
for my managerial position, and then as a manager, we need to reason correctly with this person. Not just talking about the weaknesses or the gaps that he has today, and basically giving him advice. First of all, these are the areas of improvement, and what are the areas he can basically improve upon, and then get closer to that managerial career path. But make sure again to focus on explaining the gaps that he has today, and what this person can do to improve upon, and then get closer to the managerial position that he seeks. But every single individual, they have different skill sets, and weaknesses and strengths, so we do have to cater to them differently.
Right. So basically, just to recap what you say. First of all, when your direct report comes to you with a question like that, you shouldn't be caught off guard, because that's where your one-on-one meetings comes in, right? Like, you should be aware of where they're at exactly. And then if you think that, he or she is not ready, you don't just turn them down right away. You reason with them, and find out from them, exactly why do you think you deserve a promotion, basically. From this question, we can tell that they really want to know, they want to test how you would handle a real life situation like this, right?
Correct.
And do you think your answer was the great answer that they were looking for?
I want to say yes, because the nice thing with Facebook is, so after the interview, they will give you feedback, in those different categories I mentioned. So they say that, I did very well, satisfactory in my behavioral section. So I would think.
Okay. That's definitely a good sign. So what about leadership? Because leadership is such a common topic people talk about. You see tons of videos out there talking about leadership. So, we want to find out what exactly leadership means to the Facebook team. So yeah, share with us.
Yeah, let me just describe a little bit about the culture, and then I'll get to to your question. So first and foremost, when I entered the Facebook building itself,
right?
And then I was introduced to the director of engineering. The first thing that really caught my attention was the fact that he doesn't have an office actually. He was seated right with his team actually within an open space.
Oh, okay.
So it speaks volumes, right, in terms of how do they see leadership, compared to say me coming from a banking industry, right? So most bosses and managers, they have their own office.
Right, in the corner.
Yep. So meaning like hey, my status with you, there's
that's the difference, right?
Yep, we are unique. I'm a manager, I'm a boss, I'm in an office. You're not, you're individual contributor, you sit at the desk with you, right? But Facebook, it's a huge and one of the biggest software companies. This is how they view their leadership though.
Okay.
And what that tells me is, the way I look at it is they are all treated as team members.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
They're all team members, they don't, it's not a boss thing, boss versus direction.
So you're basically saying you wouldn't be able to tell who's the boss and who's the subordinate.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And then so now in terms of the questions though, and this is a bit more about myself too, the way I view leadership too.
Okay.
So in a traditional sense, leadership, what we'll look at it more like a chain of command, a command and control type of leadership philosophy. So I tell you what to do, so then you go ahead and execute that task.
Right.
Okay, this is just my personal opinion. I do not believe in that style of leadership.
Okay.
So mine is really what they call the servant leadership. So it's really more about enabling your employees,
Okay.
Growing them, and basically, being really open to their feedbacks, understanding what I can do to support their growth. That's my focus. Not so much about doing what I want, what my boss wants. So again, right? So the servant leadership, it's really about enabling the people to succeed in their professional path. Okay, so now going back to Facebook, right? So as you can see, there are some alignment though in terms of how they view their leadership and in terms of how I view leadership as well. So there's some alignment, so that was good there. In terms of questions though, I think the biggest one was, what is one of the biggest failure you had in a leadership position.
Okay.
So it's very important in terms of how you answer this question. It's very important that you stay authentic.
Yep.
Basically, you must be open to describing a failure.
Right.
As a leader, though, you must take ownership, right?
Right.
You must be comfortable describing a failure, and what are the reflection you did, for that particular failure, and how you came out stronger from it.
So what was the example you shared with them?
Yeah, so I cannot go into details though because it's somewhat confidential in some sense. But this is what I would say though. It's when you had to change an employee's position.
Okay.
From say from a manager position to an individual contributor position.
Okay.
And doing so is an extremely challenging task, for anyone to do. It's telling someone that, in any sense, telling someone that this role does not fit you, and somehow convincing this person as well that being an individual contributor actually fits your skill set much better, and you will have much more success moving forward. So I think from my perspective, in terms of how I feel in this transition, helping this person to transition from this role to another role, I felt like I could have maybe have a softer touch.
Okay.
Not so much about how I view him.
Okay.
It's more about we have to get consensus with him to build that consensus before we move forward.
Cool.
Not just how I view him, right?
Right.
So it's really about building consensus. Again, this is a two-way agreement that both of us has to agree to this path.
Cool.
So
they just wanted to find out, like, how did you make things better? How did you reason?
Yep.
How did you, talk to them in a tactful way? So do you think you gave like a good answer? Like, how did the interviewer actually respond to your answer?
So I think the interviewer wanted a lot more specifics though.
Okay.
So that's something I learned as well from this interview process.
So they were drilling you.
Yeah, speaking at a high level doesn't really hold much value to them.
Okay.
They're pretty good at you're not just getting this just making up some stories. So that's why when I say that you have to make sure that this is your failure, not someone else's failure.
Yeah.
And you just need to be very authentic throughout this question and answers.
And did you manage to give them the specific details they were looking for?
Correct.
They did.
Yep. So that's something that I learned as well. Maybe if I had to do this again with them, I would probably start off by just go dive deep into the details from the get-go.
Right.
Yep.
So you were kind of like trying to keep it general in the beginning because you were trying to test the waters, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know, how authentic you could be.
Yep.
Because this is one thing I hate about interviews. Honestly, I hate interviews because it's actually an art, right? Where you have to balance being yourself at the same time. You don't, just air out all of your weaknesses. For instance, if you like drinking on a weekend, and you don't tell that potential employer. So that there has to be some balance, and you have to also, share just the right amount of weaknesses or failure, just so they are convinced that you're still human, or more importantly, that you're actually still a very honest person that is open to making mistakes, to owning up. You can't come off like looking so perfect, and I don't think that was what they're looking for, right? And that's why they ask you to give an example of a failure rather than a success story, right?
Correct.
Cool. And so, what other things that you observed from this entire interview with, like you said, you spoke to 6 individuals, right?
Yeah.
Did you see a pattern in how they interviewed you, or the way they dress, the way they act, that kind of thing? Basically what sets them apart from like just any other company? What makes Facebook so different, basically?
Yeah. So the whole process really comes off as very informal, actually.
Okay. Kind of like the chat we're having right now.
Correct. So they brought me to a room that had benches, they had a whiteboard, and in terms of the dressing, the dress code, the interviewers were in jeans and t-shirts. I was somewhat surprised actually.
What did you wear?
I wore the suit actually.
The suit, right?
Because
even though you kind of knew that Facebook was casual, right? But you didn't want to take the risk just in case, right?
I mean, the saying is it's better to overdress sometimes.
Okay.
Compared to
okay.
underdressing.
So you were like properly suited up. Did you have a tie as well?
Of course. Of course.
So I'm sure as soon as you stepped into the building, you kind of felt
I
out
was
of
out of
place.
place. I was
right?
absolutely out of place.
Did that actually affect your confidence?
I don't think so. I don't think so. In many ways, I feel very excited actually, right?
Okay.
I've never seen anything like this before, so.
Did they actually comment on your outfit?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
No.
So they made you feel very comfortable.
I'm sure I'm not the first one that overdressed for the interviews.
Well, I'm sure they would understand, right? Come on, your Facebook is so intimidating, right? So you want to give your best to them.
So, but yes, in terms of the general vibe, it was very informal. I felt pretty much relaxed throughout the whole interview process.
So you were not the least bit
Not at all.
scared and anxious. I find this very hard to believe, by the way, because for me, I'll be freaking out. So it's amazing that you were able to, just hold your cool, and I don't know, how were you so confident? I mean, it's a good thing, obviously. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I mean, for future potential candidates, right? You never know. Maybe you might be the next big guy, big girl in Facebook, right? So I mean, what's your advice? What would your advice be? How was it because you felt like that you were very well prepared for it?
It's not so much I'm well prepared for it though, but this is what I would encourage people to do though. For me, I mentioned earlier that I've been through a lot of interviews before.
Okay.
So to me, interview, you don't want to treat it as it's a one direction transaction. Think of it as, does Facebook suit me and do I suit Facebook? So think about it, right? So it's a two-way agreement.
Okay.
So it's not that hey, it's a one-way transaction. So think about it that way. And secondly, though, this is something I encourage a lot of junior developers and some of the younger professionals that want to seek better things. Always be on the outlook for better and greater things. So in terms, what that means is, I'm not saying continuously go out and seek new jobs, but it's always good to look at what's out there.
Okay.
And there's no harm actually just putting in an application into some of these big companies.
Okay.
Even though at that moment you might feel that you're not ready for it, but there's really no harm. And if you get a phone interview, the more phone interviews you get, the more on-site interviews you get, then it really becomes, it's not so much of a process anymore for you. It becomes
second nature.
It becomes like a discussion actually.
Okay.
To me, it becomes a discussion with them.
Okay.
So that's how I would encourage the other folks to view interviews.
So basically, what I'm hearing is the mindset, right? You had a very positive mindset basically because you didn't go within like feeling inferior, right? I mean, I feel like I might go in inferior. Come on, it's Facebook, it's very intimidating, right? Just want to be really honest here. I'll be freaking out, but anyway, I just want to learn. Just want to learn from you. What made you so confident? And obviously, preparation is key. But the other thing, I think you shared a really, really important point is to see this as a discussion, and more importantly, is to see whether not only if I fit them, but you have to find out whether that company actually suits you.
Correct.
Yeah, it could be Google, right? It could be Facebook, but still, you're on an equal basis.
Correct.
Right? It's kind of like going out on a date. You might think he or she is attractive, but you never know, if that personality type actually suits you, right? So that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. So going back to my point about the servant leadership. So for instance, had Facebook, for instance, if they have a culture of a command and control type of leadership, that would absolutely not match with my leadership style.
Okay.
Right? So again, always treat interviews as hey, it's a two-way transaction where do I fit you as well? Do they fit me as well? So always look at it that way. And when you have that view of that, then you don't feel as though like it's a one-way thing, and then all the pressure's on you. Then right? There should be some pressure on them
too. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
I think we all should have this kind of mindset, right? To not be so easily intimidated. I mean, it could be like Steve Jobs interviewing you, but Steve Jobs not level, right?
That one is true. I think that one might be a one-way transaction.
I mean, if that was Mark Zuckerberg interviewing you, I don't know, man. Mike, are you still able to keep up that cool? It's wow. But anyway, point is, you just gotta have a really positive mindset. And also, yes. So we talked about a lot of like the positive side of things, I also want to find out, Mike, what did you find most challenging, during the day, Was it an interview question? Was it like, I don't know, a certain vibe you got that kind of made you, uncomfortable in any way at all? I mean, yeah.
So the one thing I find really challenging is switching context between the different interview sessions.
Okay.
So it's not just the different types of questions you get asked, but the interviewer is different as well, right? So, going from a software developer to someone that holds a VP position. So you're constantly switching context every other hour. So every session is 1 hour.
Okay.
So
pretty long. Man.
Yep, so pretty long. So then after an hour, then all of a sudden you're talking to someone that's like has a different background, different communication style.
Did you have a break at all?
So you get like 5 minutes break and then you get a 1 hour lunch. So
okay,
yep.
We'll get to the lunch in a bit, but yeah, continue with.
So I would say just the context switching, adapting to the interviewer style as well. That was really extremely challenging. It's like as I mentioned, though, everyone has a different way in communicating, and some of these interviewers, they are from different types of backgrounds and cultures, and you just have to adapt to it. So that's very challenging.
Right, because you had to just read that person in the first few minutes. But were they, generally quite friendly, or did you have like certain interviews that were quite stern, and then you had to like be quick in how you talk to them?
Yes. Yeah. So back to my comment about adapting to it. Yes. So there was an interviewer that comes in really friendly. It's just like another brother. And then very chillax, and these are situations where sometimes you don't really know if you did well or not, because this person is just friendly throughout the whole session.
Right.
And then you get another interviewer that's in this case you can tell very very stern, very
no nonsense.
Just
you
comes
get
in,
to the point.
Just comes just all business,
Okay.
And then after you answer question, you don't get that feedback. It's
right.
Like, okay, then this person will just move on to the next question. Then exactly. So those are things that there are a lot of emotions running in your mind. So with that kind of stuff.
Right, because I would be so thrown off, right? Yep. Like, wait, did I say the right thing? What was that nod? Was it like a yes nod, positive or no? You right? Because it's. And then you had to be quick in adjusting yourself to the next question. You cannot actually like dwell on, oh my god, what's that frown on that face, right?
Yeah. And then another good example is, so another person would be, I can tell right away that he's not going to drill into any specifics. He's going to ask one question, and you're going to have to answer it to your best ability. And so then you have to make sure you adapt quickly that, okay, so this person knows. He's not going to drill though, so you better give those details right away. So you have to adapt very quickly. Again, that's what I'm trying to say. That it's very challenging to make sure that you get across your point to the different types of people. So
right. that is very interesting. So you're basically saying, because not everyone would repeat themselves, right? You only get one chance, right? And if you mess up that one question, that's it. That's all you had, right?
This person will just move on to the next question.
Do you remember what question that was?
I don't quite remember, but basically this interviewer style is very much. He's not. This person will not drill to specifics.
Okay, but it's kind of like you make it or break it, kind of.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So you make sure right. So after a few questions, after I responded, I'm like, I can tell that this person isn't like
not too convinced, right?
Not too convinced or not asking follow-up questions. Right. So then you better then adjust them. Okay, so I think this person, I should probably get into a lot more details. Because like I said, right, the previous interviewer was like, hey, you did that? Okay, so what was the reasoning then? So there's a lot of good follow-ups, so it becomes a two-way discussion.
Right.
This one is really
quite a one-way.
So
you had like a couple that were quite one-way type.
It's all over the place.
Okay.
It's all over the place, Rachel.
So you had to be really quick in how you switch, right?
Absolutely.
And you also told me that the interviewer who asked you about the technical side of things is probably the most challenging part of the interview. So tell us, how was it challenging to you, and what made it challenging?
I think in many ways, it boils down to the fact that I haven't been hands-on, for too long.
Okay.
So in my day-to-day job, with my current job, I don't do a lot of programming.
Okay.
I still look at code. I still do code reviews. I still review system designs, but I don't do coding though. Right?
Okay.
But obviously, in a high-tech or software company like Facebook, they do expect, even director levels to have, very good coding levels or skill sets. So my issue with that coding session was I didn't complete the classes in time. And my advice is, if you're at a point where in your career you haven't done a lot of coding, just to make sure that you put a lot of time, practicing, in coding before, obviously the interview itself.
So they obviously ask you beyond what you prepare, right? Because you didn't think it was gonna get to a very deep level. I'm sure you did your preparation, you did your homework, and that's on top of your day-to-day job,
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're given an hour, right?
Right.
So the question, if you maybe had you given me an hour and a half, I would have completed it. It would be an elegant solution.
Okay.
But because I have not been coding, so obviously it's a bit slower, right? To get to a solution. So it's if you're doing coding every single day. Usually, you can write out the pseudocode very quickly. Your mind is in that context. So you can get to just answering the question faster. So the concepts are not beyond me, but it's just that it's kind of rusty.
You just needed more practice and a little bit more time.
And 3 months, might not have been enough. So
right. But at least you had the experience, right?
Yeah. So that was really surprising, to me. That even at a director level, they do focus a lot on technical questions.
Yeah. So in other words, they expect you to know what people on ground are actually doing, not just what you're doing up there. Right? They expect you to know like a 360 kind of scope when you're in that position. So you mentioned it was a director's position for the IT department, right?
Correct. So Facebook consists of many software products. I was interviewing for a particular product at Facebook.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So and all 6 interviews, they were all males?
5 males and 1 female.
Interesting. What position the female held?
She is an individual contributor. Yes.
Okay.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, though, she's a project manager.
Okay. Was she the friendliest one? Being biased here.
Yeah, she was friendly. I would say,
Right.
she was friendly.
She was not the most difficult one,
No,
right?
definitely not.
Okay, cool. So we've covered a lot of the types of questions they asked, the culture and everything. And what were your other observations you made, around the office? Did you manage to see the other stuff that were on ground, in the pantry area, lunch, other subtle things, that you picked up?
So it was really cool. So the person that brought me out to lunch, this person did not interview me at all.
Oh, so it's like someone completely off of this whole thing. Okay.
I believe his title is he's a director as well. That was an extremely informal discussion. It was just me and him. He brought me to the cafeteria, at Facebook, and we sat down, and he was talking a lot about Facebook itself, though.
Okay.
Yeah. The types of people they're looking for and things like that.
So that was sorry to cut you. So was that like after 2 interviews you had?
I believe 2 or 3. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm pretty sure you think he kind of actually helped you in a way, right?
Yeah.
By the way,
Gives you more, just gives you more of a relaxed type of, just to calm you down a little bit.
Right.
So having an informal lunch, with a Facebook employee. I thought that was good. That was a nice touch, if you ask me. If you were to have a full day interview, I think that was really nice of them to do so. Getting another person talking to you, and this person made it clear from the get-go, this is not an interview.
I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah,
You
it's
said,
not an
okay.
interview, and our discussions today, will not be part of the interview feedback process.
Were you convinced though?
I was actually. Yeah.
Because I've been to an interview similar to this, right? Where they get someone who kind of follows you around, and then they're friendly, they try to get to know you a little bit. But I somehow feel like that kind of contributes towards the final decision. Obviously, he did put out a disclaimer saying that he wasn't part of it. But I kind of feel like that is actually probably the most important, because it's basically to get a feel of what you're like, off record, right? So
I don't know. I trusted him, I guess. But
Okay.
the first question I asked him, like, hey, if I do get the Facebook job, though, I would actually like what you're doing right now. Just
what was he doing?
He was actually building, a particular software for the Facebook HR department, actually, human resource department.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's obviously Facebook has a huge human resource department, and his group, is really leading all the development, and system design for HR systems, But when I say I like what he does, because for some reason he's appointed the lunch interviewer person. So I'm like, man, that's the best actually. So it's like no stress,
Okay.
You just get to meet so many different types of interviewees, I guess.
So
right?
he kept you company
Yeah,
throughout
the
the 1 hour
Yep.
break.
And then he would do that for another candidate. He's a lunch guy right now. So that's
That's a very interesting thing about
he's the lunch
Facebook.
guy. He's the lunch guy.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't his first time doing that, right?
Probably not.
So besides him and that 6 interviewers you spoke to, were you introduced to any other teammates around the area?
Not really. He brought me around just to show the different sections in the building.
Okay, so he actually took you on a
Yeah,
tour.
he-
Was
he
it
did take-
huge? Yeah, tell us about it.
The campus is huge.
Okay.
Facebook campus is massive. So I was only at one building.
Okay.
But you can tell as I enter the campus, though, it's humongous.
Okay.
They have buses, Facebook's buses moving from buildings to buildings, It's just something that, you can't even make it up until you actually go there and experience it yourself.
What was cool about the office? I mean, like, everyone has heard of the Google office, the bean bags, and
Yep.
the pantry, the food.
That's
What
all-
food did they serve you, by the way?
I'm trying to recall. So I had curry chicken, actually.
Curry chicken in
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yes.
Okay, not too
It
bad.
was curry chicken, yes. Facebook has a very, very diverse...
Is it because you're Asian?
Well, I saw curry
It's
chicken.
just an assumption.
I saw curry chicken, I had to go for it, right?
Okay.
Why not? But going back, like I said, they have a really, diverse work environment there, in the sense that, just people from all over the world.
No, was it buffet style, not buffet?
It is buffet
Okay,
style.
buffet style.
Yeah, in terms of the food that they have, though, they need to cater to a lot of people from different parts of the world.
Right. I'm sure it's a very international, very diverse
Absolutely.
kind of company. So
Absolutely.
you saw people from
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Chinese to Americans, locals, Indians.
Yep, everyone.
Okay.
I came from a place in America, Minnesota that's less diverse. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So to see something like that's pretty cool. Yep.
Okay.
And so back to your question in terms
Uh-huh.
of what really caught my attention is it's just the setup, the whole work environment setup. At least from my experience, it's so different compared to your traditional work environment setup. When I said setup, an organization, I meant there are no cubicles. It's all open space. And I mentioned earlier, you have high-level directors and whatnot, it's seated in the same space, as an individual.
So there's no like corner office or
Nope.
anything. It's just you just see everything.
So you just see a lot of people come together, mingling with each other. It feels very close knitted to it.
Okay.
But obviously, I've been told as well that there will be times where it'll be a high pressure work environment too, because sometimes you're working with deadlines and whatnot. I'm sure that happens, but I do like the open space environment. I really do. It just feels like it's a team. It gives that team spirit. Because
Right.
again, everyone's together. You get to talk to everyone very quickly. So,
So is that quite different from your current position? Do you have your own office?
Yep, very different.
So if you're given a choice now, are you actually okay seated outside in an open space?
Of course.
After having had so much privacy all along.
So you have to ask yourself, right? What purpose does an office serve? Is it a symbol? Is it a status, thing?
Right.
If you ask again, right? So what purpose does it serve? Is
Right.
it to show that you are a high level, high ranking member in the organization. So to me, it doesn't serve too much purpose besides having privacy. And Facebook has a lot of conference rooms.
Right.
And you can just walk into one. So if you need to have any private discussions, then let's go to an office. There's no reason, at least again from my perspective, there's no reason for you to have your own office, and spending 8 hours in that office by yourself.
Right.
If you look at it that way. Right? So again, if you ask me, I would prefer to be closer to my team members.
Okay,
and
that's good to hear.
in many ways, it's really to break down that barrier. And first of all, I don't see that barrier. Having an office yourself puts on this artificial barrier. Right there. So.
That's true. It's very interesting, especially if you're a boss, right? I mean, because a lot of bosses talk about, having team spirit and all that, but then it doesn't show. So what we could tell from this, right, is that Facebook actually practices what they preach, right?
Absolutely.
Because it should reflect in how you set up your office, your dressing and all that. If they're casual, cool, and fun, it should kind of show. And that also, right? Everyone was casual, and you kind of got like the casual, cool vibe. But obviously, they work hard and play hard as well, and that's why they're Facebook, right? They're so popular. We've covered so many interesting areas in your interview. So to wrap up, could you share with us, how has that experience changed you? I mean, it doesn't have to be in a major way. Did it get you thinking about how you would approach your team meetings? Is there something you would do differently after that interview? Something that you learned from Facebook, the takeaway from that day? Yeah.
So the one thing for sure, the biggest takeaway is I get to use their process, the interview process, and basically implement to my current work.
You stole the idea, basically.
Well, stealing is strong with
legally.
Stealing is strong.
Just kidding.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a good source of information.
Yeah.
I mean, you got it directly from such a successful company.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just going back to my earlier point that going for an interview, to me, it's really a very exciting discussion. You should treat it that way. You get to meet new people. You get to talk to people that that are involved in a big operation, and just getting that understanding of how they go about it and how are they so successful. That itself, it was a good learning experience for me. A huge takeaway. I totally encourage people. Always go out and explore what's out there. And even if you think you're not ready, right? Go and submit an application. Who cares? If you get to talk to them, fantastic. Then, right? If it doesn't work out, great. We'll try next time again. In terms of takeaways, though, as I mentioned, Facebook has the process is. It was a really, I would say, a high level interview process.
Right.
They have very high standards in the interview.
Probably the most.
How they conduct the interviews. Extremely professional. Yes, they give out that vibe that it's a very relaxed environment, but the process, though, you can tell it's a very high level, high standard interview process.
Yeah, they were obviously very selective, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, why would they take the effort to have like 6 people interview you and then have like a lunch interviewer, take you on a tour and all that?
And it's the other big takeaway is you hear a lot of stories about Google, Facebook, hey, their work environment is it's all this for the hipsters and whatnot, right? You hear all the stories though, and now I get to experience that though. It's so cool though, just to get a glimpse of what this big software companies the culture it was an amazing experience for myself.
Cool, thank you so much, Mike. So, I hope that you found it helpful. I hope, you managed to learn from Mike, what leadership actually really means, not just like being a boss, because, there is a very big difference between being a boss and a leader, right? And that shows a lot. I mean, how Facebook actually have an open space and all that kind of concept. I mean, it doesn't have to be just having an open space. It's just the way you actually talk to your direct reports or even your colleagues, right? There shouldn't be like a very clear distinction like, oh, I'm on top and you're at the bottom. I mean, true leadership, like you said, I like what you said, it's a servant type of leadership, right? And I think that is something that's always easier said than done. And it would be nice if people can actually put this into practice, right? And then behavioral, whenever you go for interviews, especially with companies like Facebook who are really selective. And even if the company is not selective, you should be prepared enough to tackle questions like that, basically provide a specific example, not just like I generated revenue for the company, like probably how much and then how much time you took to actually do that, right? And also the other thing is failure. I like that you talked about your experience, how you dealt with failure, how you actually spoke to a direct report, because a lot of people always feel the need to magnify their successes, right? And then they just try to downplay their failures, which is not the wisest idea, right? Because sometimes actually failure speaks more than your successes.
It does.
Yeah, true leadership is not perfect, They want to know how you actually overcame that whole failure and all that. So that's another thing. And also cultural influences as well, right? I like how Facebook is so, it doesn't have to be casual, it could still be formal, and I think the important thing here is that you have to be respectful, right? The way they approached you, even though that was your first time, they were very hospitable, they took you around, they made a point to make you feel comfortable. And also, the most important thing I feel like, out of this interview is that, like Mike kept saying, right? You should treat your interview session as a discussion. So that way it's more of a two-way thing rather than a one-way thing, and it doesn't put you in an inferior position. You don't always have to feel like you have to impress them. Even though it's a good thing, right? Through preparation, but then just bear in mind that they are also there to make an impression on you, right? They also need to do their best to attract talents, right? Yeah, so I hope that, this was really helpful to you in your next interview sessions that you might have, or even if you're not going for an interview, it could be, just applying the concepts of leadership into your workplace, and it's not only in your workplace, your home, anywhere that you could, really make a difference. Thank you so much, Mike. That was really helpful. Thanks so much, bro.
It was a pleasure.
So yes, this is Rachel's chat room. I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye!
Good luck, everyone.